Hi, everyone. Welcome to the new season of Ascension and 5D Chats. Starting off with a bang with Michelle Leigh. We're talking about what happens after death. Michelle Leigh is an intuitive medium, tarot and palm reader, Akashic record reader, and facial interpreter, and a beautiful Reiki animal healer. Welcome to Ascension and 5D Chat, where we discuss what is happening with our planet's ascension journey. I am Rachel Chamness. I help lightworkers connect to their spiritual helpers and light path.
Hi, Rachel. Thanks for having me.
Thanks so much for coming. I'm so excited to have you here. I just want to really recommend Michelle. She's a wonderful reader. I just loved my session with you, and I think you do beautiful things for the community, and I just think this is a perfect discussion for us to have.
I agree. Thank you.
So we were just talking about the different ways to say this. What happens after death, or in the South when we pass on. And I know that people watching have a lot of questions because they ask us a lot of questions. So where would you start with this topic? What happens when someone dies?
Well, when people come to, I'll get a lot of medium work. I'd say it's probably at least half the work I do, and they don't understand what happens. So I usually give them just a quickie analysis of what I think is going on. And basically, most people, if they pass over successfully, not counting those that kind of get stuck behind, but if they pass over successfully, which most people do, then they typically are met by family members, people they've known. They quickly realize they've landed in a very, very non-judgmental space. Everything is very loving, regardless of what they did when they were alive, what kind of person they were. They're met with non-judgment, which is great. It helps them just kind of facilitate their own healing. And then they go into a life review process, typically, where they evaluate what they have done. And, if it's good, okay, great, pass that lesson. If it's not so good, let's put that on the back burner and we'll talk about that more later. Or we may set up our next life so that we get more of an opportunity to work with that problem again. So I kind of explain that as simply as possible about what happens. Yes.
That's exactly what I see too.
Yeah.
So sometimes also spirit guides are there waiting for him. Like I remember even, and this is before I was a medium, but she reminded me, my grandmother saying that she saw the Virgin Mary. She was very Catholic and waiting for her. And then I think she saw her mother, and right when she was leaving, she said she saw those things and she crossed over.
Typically, they will see religious figures that they know from their life. People who grew up with no religion whatsoever will report seeing people that, if we think about it, sound very much like Jesus or other people we may have heard of, or at the very least, loving family members they have known.
I really think that all of these religious figures that we have are really just ascended masters come to life in a human form. So, they could be spirit guides. I think Mother Mary was probably her spirit guide. And what I see as a medium is the same thing. I see them being greeted, them going, if it's successful, and we'll talk about if it's not in a minute. And then the life review. Sometimes I see that they are not really around for a while because they've gone for some training, which we also, or what you call spiritual rehab.
I call it rehab. Yeah. Some people don't quite get all the way up the ladder and they need to take a little time to really evaluate things. And sometimes that evaluation period is more about they're so ashamed of things they've done. Because once they pass over and they take a look immediately and go, wow, that was bad. Then they have so much personal shame that they carry with them, even over to the other side, that they have to go through a big forgiveness program almost to get past that so they can move on. But forgiving themselves for what they've done a lot of times, people who haven't had good lives.
That's really cool. I see, what I see is like soul contracts, it's the same sort of thing. Like, okay, I came here, I had this contract to do this thing. I put this problem here and did I do well? Did I not do well? No, I really still didn't learn that lesson. I was hoping to see how I would do with that lesson as a human. And like you said, let's put that for next time. And next time it's going to get harder. Sometimes these things that we go through, it's because it's not the first time. And so we made it really hard for ourselves.
Well, and I have found too that if you're repeating a lesson over and over and over and over, spirit tends to the universe, however you want to look at it, tends to make it a little bit harder every time till you reach the point where you go, man, I have got to get this right because this is killing me. I've got to get this right in this lifetime. And they'll just keep up in the ante until you go, this isn't worth it. I've got to get this right.
Yeah, they'll do that in this life too.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. If you don't
Mm-hmm.
learn a lesson in this life, it's like, okay, this is gonna be harder next time, and then harder after that until you kind of go, I give up. I'm gonna do it.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, let's talk about some of the questions that people ask. Like, are they okay?
Most people will ask me, are they, the big one is, are they okay? Did they get there okay? Because most people, if they have a belief in heaven, that's where they think they're going, of course. And so are they there? Are they okay? And then the next biggest question is, can they hear me when I talk to them? Or do they ever come and visit me? Because I think sometimes they're in my house. And it's like, if you think they're in your house, they're in your house. And yes, they can hear everything you say or think. So you don't have to come to a psychic and say, tell them this message. You can say
Right.
anything you want on your own. Yeah.
Right. So yeah, they're okay for the most part. I mean, sometimes people don't cross line. We'll talk about that in a little bit.
Right.
But
Yeah.
of course, you don't need a psychic. You can talk out loud. I
Right.
believe the same thing. And sometimes they'll give you signs. That's a good thing that a psychic can help you with. Like, what's the
Yes.
sign? If you're not picking it
Uh-huh.
up, or, I feel like I see the cardinal. Could that be my dad? Well, we can check in. And
A lot of people mention feathers. I'll find feathers in front of my
butterflies.
path and I'll realize, oh, that's my mother giving me a message or something. Yeah. Birds are often associated with that for some reason. Yeah.
Yeah, I see
Uh-huh.
butterflies for my dad.
Oh,
And he
uh-huh.
sent me
Uh-huh.
that sign. I believe there was psychic. And of course, when she said it, I was like, oh, that has got to be it. Because I do see butterflies when I think of him. So
With older women who have passed on, you'll often hear their family say, I smell her perfume in the room. That's how
I
I can tell
do.
she's here. Yeah. They
Yeah.
smell the perfume that she was known for wearing. Yeah.
I think that's one of the strangest clairs. And
Uh-huh.
it can really be unpleasant at times. I smell people too. I smell my grandmother's. She used to wear that Coty powder. It
Uh-huh.
has a special smell to it. I don't know. I don't even know if they sell that anymore. So I can smell her, and then I can smell some of my husband's relatives, but they usually smell like smoke, like they're smoking a pipe
I've
or
had people say cigarette smoke. Oh, my mom's in the room. I smell cigarette smoke. Yeah.
cigarette smoke is a
Yeah,
really big
that's
sign.
strong. Yeah.
Yeah.
Not great, but they
It's
are.
not. Yeah. My husband's aunt often smells like a really stale ashtray
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
when she comes through. Well, they also ask us, will they come back? So we could talk a little bit about reincarnation as well.
Some people aren't surprised to hear that just because it's not part of their religion or their belief system. And but 99% of the people that I read for will come back. Um, some people are getting ready to cycle out, but most of the ones that I hear about will come back, you know. And I think that what they do in the meantime is they do a lot of preparatory type work. They work on the issues they already know they have so that when they come back into a life, they're a little bit ahead of the game. There's a lot of work that can be done in between lives. And a lot of times your time in between lives is greater than the time you actually live. So if you've had 150 years in between lifetimes, as sometimes people do, you've had a lot of time to work on things. So you come back in a better place a lot of times. Yeah.
That's
Children
really
that
cool.
die really young, they're dead at birth. They live for 3 hours, they live a year. They recycle back much faster because they
They
don't have
do.
much to process. They're
Or
right back in the
miscarriages.
game. Yeah, right back in. Yeah.
And one thing about children and babies that I see a lot, because sometimes people ask me about a baby they've lost
Yeah.
in whatever way that happened, and is that the babies know when they come in, well, I'm only coming in for a few hours. I'm only coming in, or I'm only coming in.
Right.
I'll never come across. I'll just be in the womb, and
Uh-huh.
they know that. They know their exit point when they come in, and they're okay with that. That
Yeah, they
sometimes
are.
they
They know
come
they're
back
coming
from
in.
that.
Again, it's a short-term contract that
Mhm.
they have with that parent. And a lot of times it's more for the parent's experience than it is for the child. The child is willing to donate that life experience so the parents can learn a particular lesson from it, which is hard for the parents, of course, but it's
It's
usually
hard.
much harder for them than it is for a child. Yeah. Children are fine with it.
Yeah, and I also see that they are sometimes just a soul family person who just wants to come for a little while and be close Earthside, not all the way Earthside. Maybe they don't want to reincarnate into Earth, but they'd like to be really close in the body for a while. And so that's another reason they might come for just a short while.
That makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah. The training, I love what you're saying about that, because all I know about this is that sometimes I go to contact people and they say, I can't really talk right now.
I've had that happen. I've had that happen. Yeah. Yeah.
And my dad told me that he was training.
Sometimes they're just not available. Can't do it right now. Okay, fine. Yeah. I've only ever had one person refuse to speak to a relative. And I was kind of horrified when it happened, because I thought, how am I going to tell this woman that her own mother doesn't want to talk to her right now? And it wasn't like I'm busy. It was like, no, I just don't want to talk to her. It was just kind of cold.
Oh, really?
Only once. And I thought, God, how am I going to say this? So I told her, I said, your mom is just refusing to talk to you. And she goes, oh, yeah, that's okay. She goes, I'm not surprised. We were never close. And luckily she took it really well, but that's so rare. They almost always will come in and talk.
Right.
Always. Yeah.
I usually ask ahead of time for the picture, so that I can make sure they're going to come.
Yeah.
I mean, I haven't had anyone say no, but it's always good to
only
know.
once have I had that happen. Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't usually do any work ahead. I just tend to wing it when I'm there. But a lot of people do that. A lot of people want to see pictures ahead or things like that. Yeah.
Well, I didn't always do this. So I would say talking to those who have passed was pretty much the last thing that I did. So for me, it was all new. So I started out with that just to make sure I could do it. And I would be like, are you going to come? And they'd be like, I'm here, I'm coming. I'm like, okay, come back later.
Right. Come back when we need you. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. It's very important to have spiritual boundaries.
Yeah. Another thing that has come up is when is the appropriate time to contact someone who's passed on? And as a general rule, I've always heard in the past, like, oh, give them at least 3 months to kind of adapt to where they are. But, I've had mothers come in who lost a child less than 24 hours ago. And the child was right there ready to talk. So I think that's a very individual thing. I think some people are ready to talk the minute they pass over. Others are kind of in a state of shock, need to kind of orient themselves more. Then they can talk more. They'll usually tell me if they're just like a little too blown away at the moment to talk.
Yeah.
It's a big adjustment. Yeah.
This is a good question, because have you ever seen someone who died unexpectedly? And it's not that they're not crossing over, so it's sort of, but that they haven't yet because they don't know what's happened.
Yeah.
You ever talk to a spirit who's just like, what's going on?
Right. Mostly very unexpected or brutal, such as car accidents, murders, accidental drug overdoses. They get stuck here real frequently for a while, trying to figure out what went wrong, what happened. Yeah.
Yeah, and they don't have any sense of time at all.
Sometimes not really. I mean, they don't have the physical needs that we do, so they don't sleep, they don't have to eat. So yeah, it's very different. It's very different on that level.
One time, I had a friend who died. He had a heart attack, and I believe it was just a regular heart attack. But because of what happened, people were talking, and everyone was saying that he had a drug overdose because he had had a past problem with drugs, but he was not having any problem during that time. And so what happened is he died unexpectedly, and then he was just hearing everyone say all this, and he felt like he had gone back to drugs, that he didn't know what happened. He was so upset. And I guess he was just going around, and he found me and realized I could see him. I was his voice teacher at the time. I used to teach voice. And I had to tell him, you died. And I don't really think it was a drug overdose. I think that's just talk. I think he just had a heart attack. Because I had talked to a few people, and then he was like, oh. I was like, it's okay. That's not what happened. And he was like, oh.
Right.
And then I was like, and then he was really upset. His children were really young. I said, you can go talk to your children. They will hear you. They're very young.
Right.
It's good. And then when you're ready, you can cross over. And he did. And then he was totally fine. At first he was bugging me. He was like, I couldn't get rid of him. He was there. I mean, I felt bad, but also he was like hanging out 24/7. This is kind of when I was new at it. And when I told him that, he just went. And then I asked him if he needed help, to cross over. And he didn't. He said, I'm going to wait for my funeral. And then he went.
Yeah. Yeah. And then, of course, there are those that get stuck here for years or decades or lifetimes,
Yeah.
Have some of them, I think, reach a point where they're so comfortable here, it's hard to convince them they should really pass over.
It
Very
is
hard to
really
convince
hard.
them. Yeah, they don't want to go after a while. It's like,
I
well, hey,
think,
I'm happy here. It's all good. I'm hanging out with so and so, and
yeah, you have to kind of, I found it doesn't always work, but I found that sometimes talking to them about like, hey, you can do a lot better. You can do more good on the other side.
Or, if they're really resistant, I'll bring in a bunch of angels and all their spirit guides and just bring in a whole team of people and say, help him realize he has to move on. Help him,
Right.
get him up there.
Like, yeah, you can cross them over if they refuse, especially if they're doing things, that aren't great.
if they're attached themselves as an entity to someone else, it's really hard to pull them off that body because they're very attached to that body.
Yeah,
And they're like,
no,
I'm not going anywhere. I like hanging out with so and so. So that's a tough one.
Yeah, that I do, but I see sometimes that they just they just hold on to their earthly emotions so much.
Yeah.
And that's why they don't cross over. And then once they don't cross over, it's like they get deeper and deeper into those heavy feelings, that density. And then until they let it go,
harder and harder. Yeah.
They can't go. Yeah.
I agree.
I've had to force some of them to go over for their own good, but I do use angels. Yeah.
Well, what we commonly call ghosts or apparitions are often really just people who haven't crossed over. That's primarily what they are.
Yeah.
So, and when people say to me, well, I don't believe in ghosts, I just don't believe in ghosts. I tell them I have a stock answer to that. Telling me you don't believe in ghosts is simply you saying you've never encountered one. Because once you've encountered one, you will never doubt it again, any more than if you saw a skyscraper, you would know they exist, So anyone who's ever had an encounter with a ghost will never again deny they've had that experience. So what we commonly think of ghosts are people who are just stuck here. They didn't get past, they didn't make the transition they were supposed to.
Right. They're earthbound.
Yep.
Sometimes they've been here a long time. I see a lot of miners here in Knoxville.
Well, there's, historical places around the country where those ghosts have been there for 200-300 years. And people see them all the time. They're clearly there. It's not just one or two people have seen them. People go visit these places and they're seen all the time. So their actual density has increased to the point where they're very visible.
Oh yeah, that's a good point. And then sometimes they can move things too.
Oh, they move. I've had things moved in my house all the time. Yeah.
Like flicker lights, things like that.
Even elementals will do that. Fairies and things like that will move things around in your house.
Look what I did.
They're very capricious. They like to play games on people. They'll move stuff around and go find that.
They like to teach you a lesson. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Well, let's talk about evil people. What happens to evil people? Because it sounds like you agree with me that there's no heaven or hell. There's just this life, other lives, other
I mean, I think all there are levels and levels of people. I would not go so far to say that there are no evil people, but I have never encountered anyone historically or throughout history who existed before my time that was truly all evil. Hitler loved children and animals. I don't know anyone who's truly all evil. So I think what we call evil is sometimes everything from a personality disorder to severe mental illness and a whole range of things in between. There may be real evil in the world. I don't know that I've ever personally encountered it. I know some nasty people, but were they all evil? No, not really.
I think some people come here to be the opposition, to help us change.
The dark and the light. Yeah. What's the light without the dark?
Right. We have to have that to see. And sometimes what I think is interesting is soul contracts. Sometimes we tell people, hey, I need to learn this lesson in this life. Who's going to teach it to me? And people agree to do horrible things to you in the life for you to learn to deal with something you wanted to learn to deal with.
And
And
on a side note, when sometimes people ask me, why did this person die young, for example, I will often take a look at what kind of soul contract they had with that individual. And basically, sometimes it's just they're done with what they came to do. They knew from the get-go they weren't going to get past 21 or 30 or whatever it was, and they've completed that and they're moving on.
that's
Yeah.
right. I mean, we all come here just to do what
Yeah.
we came
Start
here to
work
do.
and then we're done. Yeah.
That's why, if we were fully ascended, we wouldn't still be here. If we were
True.
perfect, if we were
Are you are you
everything,
saying
then
are you saying I'm not ascended?
well, I mean, you're still here, right?
Yeah, I'm still here. Yeah. I got
So
more
we
work to
still
do.
have a little more work to do.
Yeah, I
Thanks.
have a lot more work to do. Yeah.
That's right, me too. So I sometimes think, yeah, that evil people really, like you said, they're not all the way evil. It could be trauma too, horrible
Um,
things that.
some people deal with hardships in life by taking the high road, and some people don't have the capability to get that far with it and take the low road, you
Yeah,
know?
and they just
Um,
repeat the
yeah,
abuse.
yeah. And it's often a repetition from lifetime to lifetime. I've even heard of lifetimes that even people like Hitler have had in the past, and this is not their first go around being a bad person.
Oh,
It's
really?
often, yeah, it's often something that they've done before, and in a big way, like he did. Yeah.
Really?
Oh yeah.
That's really
Yeah.
interesting.
Yeah.
Uh, I've seen that all of us have had a past life where we were just doing something that wasn't good as well, that
Oh
we have these
yeah.
past lives, so we can experience it. So in this life,
Uh,
we can say, I know what I shouldn't do.
Right, right. I had a guy tell me one time who was very good, telling me that the reason I had some neck issues was I had been several lifetimes I'd been a pirate, and one time finally got caught and got hung, so that kind of messed up my whole neck energy. And I thought, I guess I should feel ashamed of that, but I don't. It's kind of like, did it, learned something from it, moved on. There's no point in
Right?
beating myself up about it. We've all done stupid stuff.
Sure. In this life,
Yeah,
think of all the stupid things we've done.
yeah, I know.
What about past lives when we didn't learn from it?
Yeah,
At least now we can
right.
say, well, I did the best I
Hopefully
could
I'm
with what I
moving
knew at
on.
the
Yeah.
time.
Uh-huh.
But yeah, I see a lot of people who are scared of their gifts, for instance, who are really
Uh-huh.
scared to open their gifts, have a past life where they misused magic, you know,
Uh-huh.
in such a way that is
Yeah.
kind of carrying over to this life.
Right. I always try and tell people they get to they're in that rookie stage where things are coming in and they get freaked out and go, I'm going to shut this down. I usually tell them, please, please don't shut it down because this is the closest thing you have to a survival mechanism
Right.
in your entire system. So if you shut this down, you're going to miss the messages that could one day save your life.
That's what
So
I tell people. Why would
don't
you
shut it
shut down
down.
the emergency
Just
system?
learn to filter out the stuff you don't want to look at. You know what I mean? Just say, I don't want to see that stuff. I just want to see other stuff. So, but don't shut it down because we're meant to have it. All of us are meant to have it, not just special people.
Let's talk about that. So, spiritual boundaries, you can just say, hey, don't come within 6 feet of my room. Don't come in my house. I don't want to see that. Go away. You don't have to turn off your clairs.
No, you don't. Right.
Right.
I agree. Yeah. I just tell people I don't necessarily want to know about bad experiences that I cannot control at all. I can't fix it. I can't put good energy on it. If it's going to happen no matter what, it needs to happen that way karmically for someone. Let it happen and tell me later. I don't need to tie up all my energy with that stuff. So I'm
That's a
very
good
careful
thing.
about what I tie my energy up with.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's good. Yeah. And, sometimes this is funny. Do people think that because you're a medium, you can see all their secrets and you know everything, or you're like
Or
reading
they'll
their
come in
mind?
and say, well, you tell me what I want to know. And I'll say, my first response is, I'm not a mind reader. That's not what I do. They get paid about $10,000 an hour, by the way. I've seen mind readers. That's the
Yeah.
kind of money they make. So you're not getting that level. This is different.
Well, also, I don't
Uh,
want to dig into your mind. That feels
no,
like that's
I
not
don't
a
want
good
to see who
idea.
you had sex with last night. I don't want to know that stuff. You tell me what you want to know and I'll go that far and stop, right.
Plus, let's be polite. Like we don't want
Yeah.
to. That's not the
I'm
thing
not
to do.
looking there. Yeah.
I know sometimes people try to test you because they want to know if you're a good medium, but then they shut
Right.
themselves down so hard that you can't get any information at all, because I kind of have a thing where I don't want to know anything that they don't really want anyone to know. And so sometimes they'll give me like, it could be this, or this, or somewhere around there, because the person doesn't really want anyone to know. And it would feel like a violation if I came forward with it.
I typically am very upfront about the fact that when they walk in the door, there's 20 people behind them, and I'm not going to know necessarily who all those people are by name that they'll recognize. So if they want to speak to someone, I want to know their name and who they were to them personally. Is this your grandma, your friend? Who is it? Because that's just kind of how I operate. Maybe someday I won't need to ask that question, but at this point I do ask that question. And if they're really unwilling to give me that information and not cooperate at all, I typically just kind of figure they either don't understand how the process works, because most psychics don't know everything. We just don't know,
right.
And thank God we don't really. And or they're just a contrary kind of person. I don't really want to deal with them anymore.
Right.
Those are your choices. Yeah. Either cop up some information or go find a different psychic. Yeah. That's fine with me. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And this is why practicing mediums shouldn't give free sessions to people they want to prove their mediumship to, because you'll just be hitting a wall and it will backfire on you.
No. And people will call all the time and say, can I just ask one question? I'll say no. No, you cannot, because that one question will turn into half an hour, and then you just, used half an hour of my time and it cost you nothing. And if it costs you nothing, you tend not to value it.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
That's the first
So
thing
I will do lots of free work, lots of charity work, particularly for animals. I'll go out, read palms, cards, whatever they want, and give them all the money. I don't have a problem with that. But if you're just calling because you're cheap and you want a free reading, no, I won't do it. Yeah.
I know.
Yeah.
Let's talk about pets. And you do such beautiful work for Reiki healing animals.
Yes. I do get a lot of pet owners who want to check in and see how their pets are doing. And a lot of times when their pets come in, or even just if I'm in the middle of a Reiki session, the pet's alive and I'm just doing Reiki on it for one reason or another, it's almost always either a physical or a behavioral problem. They will often talk about experiences they've had with this person in another life, or where they knew them in another life, or what they did in another life, which explains their behavior now. Like there's a dog I've worked with quite a bit in West Tennessee that has had a real hard time adjusting to being a dog. And that's because this is his first time as a domestic animal. In the past, he's been a wild, either wolf or a dog, or like a dingo in Australia, something like that. And so he's very unaccustomed to living in a home. And he's adapted pretty well, but it's been a real adjustment for him. Yeah. They'll tell you why. This is hard for me because I've never done it before, or and the other thing about pets is some come in and they're highly socialized and highly intelligent, and they will speak to you almost the way a Shakespearean actor might. Perfect grammar, English, everything. And others are much less sophisticated and will just show you a lot of visual images. Well, you'll ask a question and you'll get a visual image. And I realize, oh, okay, they're not very proficient with language. Okay, fine. Either way.
I see that too. Some give pictures and some talk.
Some don't talk a blue streak. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Some tell me they come from that they're helpers. They're galactic helpers that come to help the
okay.
owner. Yeah.
I haven't run into that yet, but I'm sure it's out there. There's certainly a lot of people like that. Why not animals? Yeah.
Yeah, I've heard some tell me that all the spaces were taken for humans in this time. We signed up, Ascension, and so some came as pets. There were places open.
A couple of years ago, I worked with a horse, and he was a very, very well trained dressage animal, and I told the owner that he wasn't going to continue to train. He started acting up during training after years of this, and so I said he's not interested in being a dressage horse anymore. He's done this in many lifetimes. He was a Lipizzan stallion. He's been highly trained in many lifetimes. He's done. What he wants to do now is socialize with humans as much as possible, because in his next lifetime he's going to be a human. So if you try and train him again, he's going to go lame on his left hind leg, and it's not going to work. So she gave him a rest, and then she put him back out with training, and he went lame, and they put him down. And he told me at the time, he said, they're not going to put me in a rescue. They're just going to put me down. And they did. They put him down. And, but he was so excited. He was like not the least bit afraid of death because he knew he was going to get to come back as a human. He was just so excited about that.
Sometimes bugs, they're kind of excited to come back as something else.
Uh-huh. Bugs. I haven't dealt a lot with bugs. I should. I try not to kill them, but
I try not to, but there are some
sometimes,
limits to my
yeah,
patience. Yeah.
too many ants in the house. Gotta go. So, yeah, can't pick you up all one at a time. So, yeah.
Yeah, or spiders. Large
Uh-huh.
spiders. I like
Usually I just
spiders.
throw them outside. We have a bug cup. We pick them up, throw them outside.
That's good.
Yeah.
Yeah, I put bugs out as much as I can.
Yeah.
What about pets coming back? Do you see a lot of pets coming back?
Some pets will tell their owners when they're leaving that they will come back in the future, and they'll usually be very specific about, yes, I'll come back again as a dog or a cat, or I have a rat I'm waiting for it to come back. I used to have a lot of pet rats, and so there's one that anyway, it was very clear that it was coming back as a rat. So I haven't had any rats lately, so I know at some point I'll have another rat. Yes, sometimes they will repeat with owners. If it's a very close relationship, they'll come back again. Absolutely.
I have a cat that I had that we were very close. And when she passed when I was pregnant with my son, and she was saying at the time she wasn't sure she was going to come back, but now she's saying she's going to come back. But, so the cat I have now is elderly, and she keeps saying that she's going to go soon, but we keep asking her to please stay.
Right, we need you here.
Yeah, but it seems that my other cat will be back next.
Oh, so. Well, good. Yeah. It's about half and half what I get with horses, between 50% probably behavior problems, another 50% just physical issues, because horses are just high maintenance animals. They have a lot of physical issues, a lot. If they were all out in the wild, they wouldn't so much, but they're not out in the wild, so they run into all kinds of issues, in barns and farms and places like that. Yeah.
What about pets who, a big question people give is they feel guilty because they had to put their pet down, or
right.
an accident happened, maybe they got hit by a car. And I find that cats especially they know when they're going to pass.
Right.
What do you get about that?
Most animals do know when they're going to die. I found rarely do they have any great fear about it. They may show some fear if you're actually trying to physically handle them heavily, but on a soul level, they really have no fear about it. They just don't. And they'll often tell you about when that's going to be, and that's usually when it is. And so the owners usually have a much harder time with it than the animals do. Yeah, for sure. Yeah. It's like losing a child, it's rough. Yeah.
It is rough because there's such unconditional love.
Right.
And they're always there, They don't talk back to you so much.
I have animals who thought they were going to die a certain way and made them realize they didn't have to die that way. Like one horse, I asked him, I said, how are you going to die? Because he was talking about it. I said, what's going to happen to you? And he said, well, I'm going to fall. One of my legs is going to fall in a hole and it's going to break and they're going to have to put me down. And I said, did you die like that before? And he goes, well, that's how horses die. It's kind of like he didn't get there were other ways. And I went, oh, you don't have to do that. And he goes, I don't? I said, no, why don't you just live out your life? Have a long, happy life. I said, and then someday you're going to lay down in the pasture and you just won't get up again. He went, oh, okay. Like it never occurred to him that he could do something different,
That's
so it does
cool.
It does help to talk to them about stuff like that. Sometimes they don't even know what their options are, depending how developed their soul is. If it's somebody new to being a horse, they're going to go, oh, there's other ways to go. Okay. All right.
That is really neat.
Yeah.
Do you ever see this sort of thing that this woman showed me? She hasn't transitioned yet, but she showed me that there are these exit points, and that because she had told me she was going to pass. She's my friend's mom. She told me she was going to pass soon. She has Alzheimer's and she's bedridden. But then when that time came, something happened in the family and she didn't feel right leaving at that time. So she passed it up. And then she said the next exit is a little bit further away. Have you ever experienced that?
Any astrologer will tell you that certain exit points do show up throughout your chart. And it's the same whether you look at it from an astrological point of view or just in general. There are always exit points, and if you pass it, yeah, then it's kind of like, well, I couldn't make a right hand turn here. I'll just have to make the next right hand turn. But some people will take the first one they get. Some people won't. They'll just go on and on and on past all the exit points till they've just worn their bodies out, can't go any further. Yeah.
Why do you think people do that? Why don't people just cross when they're miserable and they have no quality of life?
Well, that is often when they do cross, but not everybody is at that point yet where they're that miserable. Or some people, I think human beings in general have this underlying hope somewhere. And this is what got people through Nazi Germany. People have this underlying hope somewhere that they're going to make it through this. This is how some people lived through camps and some people didn't, there's always this underlying hope that, there could be more if I just wait longer. It could get better. It could get better. And so I think people carry that hope around with them. When they really lose all hope, that tends to be when they make the exit.
Yeah. I just wonder about people who are, who can't speak anymore and are in bed for so long. And
sometimes they hang around because they know there's someone there that loves them so much. They'll be devastated when they go.
That's the only thing that I see in it.
Yeah.
Is that they feel like that person just hasn't come to a place where they can accept it yet.
Yes. I can't leave that person yet. It's going to destroy them. Yeah.
Now I have seen that with my husband's grandmother. She just didn't think that she could leave, yet, because she would devastate two people too much.
Yeah, a lot of people will hang out for other people past their normal time, I think,
Well, Michelle, this was so fun. Thank you so much for coming on. It's nice to have you here.
Thank you. It's always enlightening to speak with you and hear other perspectives, because no one person has all the answers, that's for sure.
Yeah, it's really cool hearing a lot of things that you said that I didn't know, so I love it.
Yeah.
Well, you can find Michelle at mystical-entertainment.com or 865-599-0819. And she lives here in Knoxville. You can see her in person too if you're here.
I do a lot of Zoom sessions for people that are outside the Knoxville area. If you are in the Knoxville area, I do a lot of charity events for animals. If anyone has an organization like that, let me know about it. Be glad to help you. I obviously do lots of private readings and even pet events.
When you work on pets, do you do it mostly distance or do you do some in person? Or
I do both. I do them in person when I can. Most of the time, most of the animals I work on are nowhere near me. I have a bunch of horses up in Wisconsin that I do. I have a bunch of horses out in Memphis, which is like 8 hours away. So most of the work is remote, but when I can, like I went up to a little horse rescue last week and worked on a little mini horse up there. When I can, I do it in person.
That's great.
Yeah. It's so much more satisfying to actually see them get the energy and feel it, and then you can just watch the change happen while you're there. It's amazing, really.
That's great.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thanks for coming, and thanks everybody. I'd love to hear what you think. If you have any questions for us, or if you agree or disagree, I'd love to hear in the comments below. And please like and subscribe, and see you all next time.